You're listening to the Home Staging Show podcast, and this is Season 2, Episode 7. This is your host, Cindy Lin. Hey guys, welcome back. If this is the first episode that you're listening to, the Home Staging Show is all about learning how to create a beautiful home, whether it is for selling or for living. On today's episode, I interview a veteran home stager and the leader in the home staging industry, Karen Otto. She's the owner of Homestar Staging Texas, and she started her business right around the same time as I did. If you have been listening to the show for a while now and like the show, please take a minute to rate and review the Home Staging Show on iTunes. That will be super helpful because that will help other people to find the show and allow me to keep finding great guests and keep recording. Today's show is brought to you by EcoJoe, the eco-friendly St. Joseph statue home selling kit. In real estate, there's a tradition of praying to St. Joseph statues for good luck, and we made an eco-friendly one made with clay. EcoJoe is 100% natural. He won't harm the earth. To find out more about the product, just visit www.ecojoekits.com. EcoJoekits.com. So I just love the way Karen mixes different colors and textures, as well as mixing in vintage pieces with her staging. She also uses materials and props in creative and unexpected ways, which we'll also talk about on the show today. We also chatted about the business a little bit. I know sometimes when home stagers get together, we can't help it but to chat business. But I think it is also important for you guys to listen to it, even if you're a homeowner who have no interest in ever owning a home staging business. Because it is important to hear the behind the scenes stuff so that it gives you a better understanding and perspective on what to look for when you're hiring a home stager. Or if you're a new stager wanting to build a better business, because that is important too. Great staging is not enough to sustain a business. You also have to have a solid business model that fuels your passion and serves your purpose. On top of that, you're providing a valuable service to others and to help them sell their house quickly. We also talk about the design process of pulling a home together, sourcing and shopping, and the importance of getting a great photographer. Hey Karen, how are you?
Hi Cindy, it's great to talk to you tonight.
Yeah, I really appreciate you coming on the show. I know you must be very busy. This year has been crazy market. I'm sure it's the same where you are.
Well, finally here in North Texas, we're seeing the appreciation, and not that we're in a bubble, but the real estate market has really picked up here in North Texas.
That's awesome. So I want to ask you, the reason why I'm bringing on a show is that you have been such an amazing leader in the industry, and you just have done so much in terms of consumer education. So to start off, do you want to tell us a little bit about your background and how did you get into your line of work?
Well, apparently staging has been something I've done all my life. When I was a child, I was always rearranging and reorienting my family's furniture, and I had to share a bedroom with my sister. So I found creative ways to create my own space. So it's something that I've done as a child, and as I got older and got my degree in marketing, when I finally figured out what I wanted to do when I grew up, staging was the perfect mix of that home design, rearranging, and marketing skill set that I already had. So I think it's important for anyone, a child, young adult, going through life, figuring out what things you love to do when you're younger. Oftentimes you can turn that into a business as you get older.
That's very cool. I love that, actually. Because I think when I was growing up, too, it was very like, okay, like you should get good grades and maybe be a teacher, a doctor, or a lawyer. It was like very like, kind of like everybody has their own peg. And I think that nowadays, especially with the millennials, it's very like, follow your passion. I think that's amazing.
I do too. And I think that's so important to recognize And I'm probably in a much older generation than you are, but money is not the pursuit of all. And I think if you can identify something that you are born with and gifted and talented with, and you can position yourself in a market that can sustain whatever it is you're passionate about, or that you create your own life. I think it's important to recognize that we all have talents in certain areas, and it's not always what you are told that it's going to be, but I think our hearts tell us. And I'm very fortunate to have been able to start my business in 2006 to some crickets and things that weren't going well, but to build it to a point almost 10 years later that I'm seeing the success that I'm very grateful for to have. But it all stems back to my childhood.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then can you tell us a little bit about your business? Like what kind of service do you provide to home seller and agents?
Sure. Now, when I first started, I was offering a multitude of services, but I've kind of honed down to strictly service the home seller market. I My tagline is I help turn house hunters into home buyers. So now I strictly stage to sell. I don't enjoy the stage to dwell, although I know there's a lot of stagers and redesigners out there that do that. I've defined my passion and my wheelhouse, so to speak, and marketing real estate for sale is what I enjoy doing most.
I think that's great. I think that's really great that you have found your niche. I think when I had Michelle Finnemore on the show, we talk about similar aspect of that in our business as well. And since you brought up staging to dwell, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
As far as the staging to dwell side of it, that's when somebody's living in the house and they want to have help with what they might already own or offset new pieces with what they already own. That oftentimes the stager can come in and more cost effectively work with what they have and help them see the vision that they might have had for themselves in a way that a fresh set of eyes can do. I find that a little more time consuming. And again, I work strictly on the staging to sell side of the business, to where my first client are generally realtors who bring me in when they're listing a property. And the staging to sell is a bit different than the staging to dwell, as I know you know.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about the difference between the two really quick?
Well, staging to dwell is really for your own personal style and your taste. And I always tell my clients I don't live in a staged home. My house actually looks like a flea market blew up in it because I love stuff.
That's
And
awesome.
as you know, I shop a lot and
Hmm.
I have a lot of eclectic things. But my own personal style is not what it's about when I go to sell my house. In fact, I've told local stager friends I have here in my RISA group that when it does come down to sell my house, I don't know when that will be. I will not be staging my own house because we cannot see our own home the way a buyer, a prospective buyer, can see it. The
Right.
staging to sell side, and I tell my clients this, it's not about you. It's not about you as selling your home. It's for the buyer. So what you may love, your friends may tell you that they love about your home, it completely changes when there's a completely new set of eyes. You're asking to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for the property that you're selling. They don't care about your collections and what you've done over your travels.
Hmm.
The house itself should be the shining star when it comes to selling. And oftentimes we're undecorating and taking away layers of years of accumulation that a lovely home may have. But again, it's not about the stuff. It's about the stuff that stays with the house, not the stuff that you own.
Yeah, very well said. I think that's a great point to make. And one of the main reasons I want to get you on the show was that because we're Facebook friends and I see a lot of your photos and they look beautiful. And I think that you really have this great sense of style where you can mix different textures, colors, and patterns very well. And a lot of times I see people try it and they often fail. So I especially love that you also use vintage and antique pieces that, in your finds. So can you talk a little bit more about your design process and how you pull homes together?
Well, I think it's important to understand your market and to know what works in Texas may not work, let's say, in San Francisco.
Hmm.
So, understanding the demographic and the target buyer of the home, the style, the scale, the aesthetic, I think it's important to understand that first and foremost, because although I love to layer in vintage pieces, it doesn't work in every home. So, we need to know where it works and where it doesn't. In an uber contemporary modern property, although I may add some vintage pieces, they would be more in line with that period of when the home was built. So you need to understand first, again, the target buyer and the area that you're working in. And then as far as layering in, That's personally my wheelhouse too, where I do that in my own home. It was out of a need when I was younger, where we didn't have a lot. So we had hand-me-downs and cast-offs, and some new, some old, and learning how to blend those styles. But I think most homeowners, and the price points I work in are generally under $500,000.
Mm.
And in a first or second time home buyer market, a lot of us have that already built into our home decor, where we may have our grandmother's hutch or some pieces that we took from our college days, whatever it might be, or our parents gave us when we moved out. Learning how to layer that in with new, I think, is a very current trend. And I think it'll be timeless as well, because we all have things from the past that evoke feelings and emotions that we'd like to keep. And really, when selling a home, evoking those emotions too in a buyer, I think, are important as well. So the pieces that you see when you see my photos online, they're always vacant properties. They are certain price point and neighborhoods, and I have learned how to incorporate with a light hand the pieces I feel will work and speak to the buyer in that particular market. As far as where I find my pieces, well, it varies. There are so many great places here in North Texas and East Texas that I've been fortunate enough to find. But whenever I'm in an area that I'm working in, if I spy a thrift store or a secondhand resale type shop, I'll stop if I have time, and I'll run in and I'll do a quick kind of recon mission and see if it's worth coming back to, or make a quick round trip through there and see what I can buy in the short time that I'm there. So I'm frequently doing that. And I know some folks say they don't have time for it. I count it as part of my business, that it's something I make time for, because that is a certain brand that I think I've done here, where I don't go and buy things from the home stores, and that's all you see in my properties. There's usually a definite blend and mix of old and new, and it doesn't have to be expensive. And sometimes you might find something really great. And one of my best and biggest finds was a pair of $20 lamps after some research I did. They were Murano glass lamps. They have been discontinued, and after they were appraised, they were about $2,500 a piece. So
Wow.
the $20 investment I made in those lamps are probably the two most expensive things I own in my own home. So you just never know what you're going to find. And I like to do that. I don't know, everybody, likes to do that. And they might have a connotation that a thrift store is, not good, or it's dirty, or whatever it might be. But I think you can really find some great home decor cheaply in thrift stores, Salvation Army, Goodwill, even any kind of secondhand store that might donate to some societies in your local market.
Yeah, no, I agree very much. Especially in the higher end neighborhoods, usually those thrift stores have better stuff as well. That's from what I found. And you can get great pieces. I've done that too. I think early on in my staging career, I definitely did a lot of thrift store shopping. Do you do a lot of DIY project as well, like refinishing your pieces?
There was a time when I actually had a small booth in an antique mall, and I was doing some
Ooh.
refinishing of pieces, trying to kind of getting rid of some of my inventory or refreshing it, but in a way that was I kind of marketed it with my own business. I had my business cards there, but it's really a second job to refinish furniture
It
and
is,
do that
yeah.
kind of thing. So I really don't, and I'm happy to purchase it from antique malls and other stores too if I need a piece like that. But personally, now I don't have the time that I would love to be able to do that.
Yeah, I really love your photos because they are very bright and then they also play with contrast very well. I like your inventory selection. And what I found that's something that's really hard to do because I think a lot of times when homeowners try to stage a home themselves and they don't know when is too much and then when is too little. So you kind of either get when you come in to look at the house, you either get there's nothing on the countertop at all, or there's like a lot of stuff everywhere. So I know it's a pretty fine line to walk in between. How do you determine when is just perfect for you when you
Well,
do
there's
home staging?
there's a rule of thumb that I think it's easy for people to follow, and I teach this in my classes to home sellers and agents that want to learn how to DIY. The rule of one, three, and five,
Hmm.
where odd numbers work best for the eye and it's more aesthetically pleasing. So if you're stumped go for one and three. Don't do five.
Right.
And think of one of something, a nice statement centerpiece on a dining table, three of the same thing on a coffee table. And you'll often see that in my work that there's three or one of something. I kind of have a repetitive pattern. It may not look like that, but if you go back and look at some of those photos, imitation is the highest form of flattery. I've seen this done by other stagers, by other designers. I'm just copying it and doing it in my own way with my own products. So, you know, you're as good as the people you surround yourself with. So I
That's
think
very true.
there's so many catalogs that come out and design shows and online resources from Pinterest to house that a homeowner, or whether they're selling or dwelling, they can find some great ideas and just copy it.
Right. Yeah. When in doubt, just copy it, really. Especially from catalogs from like Pottery Barn and West Elm or like Restoration Hardware, where they have a very massive appeal depending on where your market is. Those are really good places to take ideas from.
And I have loved those for years. And if you look at those catalogs, and in fact, with my staging, I liken that. And when I talk to people about the kind of design aesthetic we do, it's more of the Pottery Barn Restoration Hardware, where I used to call, 10 years ago, I'd call the catalog because there was a piece in the picture that was vintage and I loved it. Of course, it wouldn't be for sale, but they've layered in that brand new fabric sofa with a lovely, bespoke wagon wheel or whatever it might be. So I've looked in the catalogs for ideas for myself for when we are purchasing inventory to copy and mimic as well. Like I said, imitation is the highest form of flattery. Nothing new has been invented yet. It's just how you interpret it and how you want to bring it to your
Yeah.
brand.
And how you basically, yeah, you interpret it personally, and that's the flair I think consumers hire us for, is because
Exactly.
we
If you can,
interpret style differently.
if you can't do it yourself, I mean, I wouldn't want to plumb my house. I can't do plumbing. I'm not going to, rework the pipes underneath my home. I'm going to hire a professional for that. If you love that and it's something that you enjoy doing in your own home, but you're kind of stumped for it on how to perfectly place it. Again, imitation is the highest form of flattery. I keep going back to that. But look at the design catalogs, go online. And if you love it and it looks good to you while you're living in the home, great. I mean, really, when we're selling, I think it's kind of like looking at your baby. You don't want anyone to criticize the baby. And I'm the same way. I love my home. I love my things. And my friends say they love it too. Whether they do or not, they probably think it's, how can she stage other people's houses when her house looks like this?
Oh my
they,
God.
they, they don't tell me the truth. But I don't live in a staged home. I don't want to live in a staged home. It's a marketing product. We're packaging something to appeal to other people. My personal style doesn't need to appeal to anyone when they're trying to buy my physical property.
Right. That's a very good point. And then, yeah, I mean, I don't live in a stage home either. In fact, I live in a very messy home.
We all do. How we live and how we sell are two. How we sell and how we dwell are two very different things.
Yeah, and also like when we're selling, we have a lot less furniture that we'll put in. I mean, because it's for show and we're giving people a suggestion of the lifestyle that they want to buy into. So
Exactly.
I'm not gonna like, put in every single piece of furniture I need for actually living. And that's just the way it is with staging. And the other thing too, like what I love about your photos is that you use like your use of props. I think it's amazing because I'm looking at the photo that you did where you hung these vintage wooden game boards on the wall
Hmm.
instead of the usual artwork. And then on in the photo as well, like on the side table, you also have it looks like it's like casserole pan that you're
They were
using it.
enamelware. I know exactly what you're
Yeah.
talking about. And there were some
It's
magazines in one,
awesome.
which is kind of like a enamelware tray. And the bucket had some game pieces in there too.
Yeah.
But that was a 100-year-old house, a historic home. So it harkens back to the time where people were using the enamelware and playing with large wooden game boards. So even though we're living in the 21st century, it's 2015, someone who's appealed to the 100-year-old farmhouse style, that's something that can evoke some emotion too. So thinking about certain rooms and what you can add or change or add an emotion to, I think it's important for staging to sell.
Yeah, I really love that.
Thank you.
Because I think it's a very thoughtful way to approach styling, which I really love. Like I love that you just mentioned that, well, it's a 100-year-old house, so that's why I'm incorporating these pieces. And I think most of the time when people just walk by, they don't really think about it, but it adds a layer of sophistication, I think, in terms of styling and appealing to a different target market. And I think that's amazing.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. And I'm really jealous, I think. I think Texas has a
Come on
lot
out.
of great vintage pieces. I'm like always so jealous when you post your fixer photos. And I know you're super close to the fixer upper people, like the Magnolia
And the funny thing
stores.
about that is, I look at her photos, I look at even her personal style. I've pointed out a bracelet she was wearing to my husband. I have the same exact bracelet.
I
Her
know.
certain style is very similar to mine, but even her aesthetic, and everybody's fallen in love with that. It really is something that's been timeless. It's been here for a long time. I've had it all my life, but it's now something that's on trend. But you also have to need to know, again, when to lightly hand it to do it.
Yeah.
Because when they do style those properties in Fixer Upper, someone has already bought the home and they're living there. They're going to be living in that home. They're not necessarily selling at that point, although most people would buy it as is. They'd want all the contents as well, and that's not unheard of to be asked to purchase the inventory that you have in the home. But I think it's still important to understand how far to go. That the house should always be the star. The,
Right.
the stuff that's in it should just be an accessory to the home, and not underdoing it, not overdoing it. And I think that's where the expertise of a home stager can really come into play, even if it's your own stuff, if it's the seller's own possessions. In fact, most of the work I do is consulting, where we are going in and telling the homeowner what to edit, remove, repurpose, reuse in a different way that they can do it themselves. My goal is never actually to come back to a home after I've met with someone. I want to empower them and teach them why it needs to be done, how it can be done in a way that's not going to overwhelm them, and get the same goal. You know, it may not be as exactly as I would do it, but they are quite capable of doing it if they're willing to take on the challenge, and we're happy to come back as well. But my goal is always the same as the realtor, to help get them sold faster and for the most money, and for them not to spend too much money to get it ready for sale.
Yeah, no, I love that. Because that's really why that's our job. That's what they're doing. And I love that you mentioned the point, it's like not going overboard. Because I think a lot of times people get so into the styling part, they forgot that the ultimate goal is to really sell the house. Like you want people to really love the house, but the stuff, it's just the stuff. I mean, it doesn't come with a house, right? So it's,
Yeah, and photo styling
yeah.
is really important. I think when you're looking at the photos now, the ones that you're talking about, I have had the entire control over what goes in and not, doesn't go in to those photos. And I get a bit frustrated when I do go back and look at photos of the homeowner DIY sometimes, and they haven't removed all the items on the top of the cabinetry in the kitchen. That if there's not clearance of, my benchmark is 18 inches. So if you don't have 18 inches between the top of your cabinet and your ceiling, everything should come off. And if you have a high-end kitchen, really everything should come off, because your eyes should be on the prize of the high-end
Yeah.
appliances and the granite and the finish outs on the cabinetry. Decor, again, shouldn't take center stage to the house and the contents that are staying.
Yeah. I agree. And I think there have been discussion about vignette staging where people just come in and then maybe they'll put some stuff on the countertop, hang up artwork, and that's it. I personally am not a fan of that because I feel like then it's more about the stuff. It's not necessarily about the space.
Yeah, I just had that conversation with someone today. I will say, though, as far as vignettes, I think in certain price points and certain square footages, not just a piece of art and a towel in the kitchen, but a pub table, a couple club chairs, a blow
Hmm.
up bed in a bedroom. We actually do offer that for some investment properties under certain price points and under certain square footages in certain markets. The home that I got a call on today was over $300,000. It was 4,000 square feet, and the ballpark budget was a little too high for them. And they asked, well, what about just vignettes, light staging? I said, we don't do that, because really It's either go all the way in that certain price point and that square footage, or don't do it at all. Just take
Yeah.
beautiful photos of the vacant property, because it's really not money well spent to put a piece of artwork over a fireplace. It does not help with scale. It doesn't help with the point of reference. Does my sofa fit? Will my king size bed fit? That's the kind of questions that a buyer will have. Whether you're highlighting a mantle that you can hang a piece of artwork on or not is not the point of staging. It's about helping someone see themselves and their stuff in that environment.
Yeah, I so agree with that. And that's why I feel like a lot of time there's this misconception for agents and home seller where they feel like, oh, I just hire somebody to stage it and then that's it. But like, like staging comes in many forms and same with home stager. So I feel like if you truly want to invest money, like it really needs to be money well spent and you're really going to get your return on investment. And for things like you just said, that's why I'm not a fan of vignette staging, but I understand again, it's knowing your market, but some markets, that's all they do. And staging is not, the full staging is not very popular yet in those type of areas. But where like in San Francisco, where home staging is very well known, if you were to do vignette staging, it's actually more distracting in a negative
Yes.
way because people expect you to either stage it or just leave it vacant, right? Like either fully stage the house than just instead of just putting a potted plant out kind of
Again,
thing.
in that
So,
market, the price points, whether the square footage is small or large, doesn't matter. It's There's a certain expectation in certain price points
mhm.
that I'd rather see it vacant and empty than throw a few things on the wall and on the counters. It just clutters the vision to me of what the space could be and distracts the eye. And to me, it doesn't overcome any objections if there are any. And in a vacant property, as we both know, the major objections are always, will it fit? It feels
Yeah.
smaller.
Hmm.
There's nothing to emotionally tie into, and people zip in and zip out because there's really nothing to envision when they're there. I think it's less than 10% of folks can see the emptiness. And so that rules out like 90% of the people walking through. So if 10 people walked into your house, that there's 9 people that can't see what they're going to do with it. That one buyer hopefully will come who can see the vision and the blank canvas and know what to do with it. I, I really get more calls now for vacant properties, especially in our hot market, than I do for occupieds from cold callers, because what they're finding is they've overpriced because, okay, it's a great market right now and price is number one. We haven't gotten to that about, what is one of the biggest mistakes that people make. I don't think it's the realtor that's making the mistake in this case. It's generally the seller who wants to overprice a home because the Joneses down the street got X number of dollars for their home. We want the same, but we haven't done the same thing as the Joneses, but of course they got it and we should get it as well. Overpricing is selling suicide.
Right.
I
Yeah.
don't care how well you've staged a property. If you overpriced it, you've lost your buyer pool. So that's the biggest mistake I see. But vacant properties, especially when they're overpriced and they're empty, that's it. They have price reductions, time on market.
Yeah.
If people don't think that, if they think staging is an investment and it's expensive, they don't think about the time on market and the price reductions, that it may be money in the air and not literally out of your pocket, but it really is.
Yeah,
And
you're still carrying the mortgage. So
exactly. You're still paying. And then
your
if you've
utility costs and all that
taken a
maintenance.
10 or 20 or 10%, 5% price reduction on let's say it's a $500,000 house. If you take a 5% price reduction on a $500,000 house, that's $25,000. I can guarantee you, at least here in Texas, and a $500,000 house, you're not going to be paying $25,000 to stage it. So
No. Yeah.
the investment on the front end is always what returns on the back end, and it's conveying that to a seller, to an agent, to help them convey that to a seller. I think it's key for a stager to be able to have that conversation and provide that information. And I think RISA is a great resource for that. Classes that we teach and helping them understand the carrying costs and the reductions are money out of pocket. It's just like any investment in a stock. You put some money down and you hope to make a return. Your home is your biggest investment. Why aren't we taking the same care with our homes to invest in it to get the best price on the back end?
Exactly. Yeah, I love we're talking about this. Yeah, so I want to talk about sourcing a little bit. How do you
Okay.
source your product? I think we talked about it briefly. You mentioned it sounds like you don't buy a lot of retail, or you still do buy
Well, I
retail.
actually do buy retail, but I try to pepper in the layers of, vintage and items that are not, every how you could find it at every home goods store. We have a great resource here. It's called At Home. I don't know if do you have an you don't have At Home in California yet,
No, I
but
don't think we do.
it's a very large home decor store. Home goods is always great. I think Home Sense it's called in Canada, but Ross, Marshalls, TJ Maxx, those places, the hunt is part of the fun, and you can't always find the same things there, every month if you go
Yeah.
frequently.
Hmm.
But truthfully, I mean, from garage sales to thrift stores to secondhand stores, I love antique malls as well. We have some great large events every month here in Texas. They're called trade days. There's
Hmm.
Canton First Monday Trade Days. It's one of the largest in the country. It's worth a trip, and I would recommend if anyone did come out for Canton First Monday Trade Days, they did it in the fall. I think the November Trade Days is the largest attended and most vendors that are there in the month of November because it's before the holidays and the weather's great. But we also have a smaller one called the McKinney Third Monday Trade Days. But Canton's like a mecca for a lot of people. And there's also Round Top, which I have yet to be. That's twice a year, and that's in Round Top, Texas. And there's huge fields of vendors from all over the country, all over the world, really, that set up
Yeah.
shop and have some great items for purchase.
Yeah. It's on my bucket list actually. And I heard really crazy things about Round Top. I mean, who's that woman who does shabby chic? Her name's Rachel something. I can't, I'm blanking on her name, but she's the founder of that whole shabby chic movement. Apparently, she loved Round Top so much, she opened a B&B there.
Oh, well, I would advise if you did Round Top. In fact, our RISA Dallas chapter is talking about going out in the
Hmm.
spring and having kind of like a group event, booking a year in advance for the fall or for the spring because they really book up quickly in the area.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. Yeah, but it sounds like amazing because I watch Fixer Upper from time to time, and it looks like she goes as well. And it's just like the things I see in the background, I was like, oh my God, like I wish I could reach into television and just grab it, that kind of thing. It's pretty cool.
I know. I think she just opened up something at the High Point Market. That was just this week, I believe.
Really?
So, I mean, they've
Wow.
got a huge brand, yeah, and they're opening up a new store in Waco called the Silos Magnolia Market, and I was able to drive by this summer on a recent trip. But that's if you want fixer upper goods, they've got them at their Magnolia Market at the Silos in Waco, Texas.
Pretty insane. Oh my gosh. They really are building an empire. It's pretty
They
amazing.
are, it's like single-handedly revitalizing a small town because Waco is the college town. It's
Hmm.
Baylor University is there, and they're both grads of that. But I think it's amazing how, have you ever been approached for a pilot or some sort of television show? Because I've talked to different people about this and how that works is they'll shoot one show and if it has some traction, they'll shoot another and see what happens. But that has just exploded. And I think it's a tribute to the endearingness of the couple. They're
Yeah,
very cute, and the husband and wife team. They got a great
they're
little
super
family,
cute. Yeah.
but they do have an empire of real estate. It's not only just the homes that they build, but they have a real estate brokerage as well now. So
Yeah.
do a little digging online, and you can see and follow them on Instagram and Facebook and all those good places.
I think they have a great business model. I think it's smart. And I think, yeah, I see a lot of stagers moving into that as well. I definitely there are more and more uh real estate agents who are stagers and then become real estate agents or vice versa, and then they have successful careers. I think it's very hard to do. I prefer my business model to be very lean and very nimble, and I don't really want to build super huge businesses that I don't feel like I can grow healthily. So, yeah, I think, to each of his own, but yeah, I think it's amazing of what they do, and I just love that they're really nice people too, because I
Yes.
definitely encounter TV people where they're not so nice people. And you're like,
The
okay.
smoke and mirrors behind the camera.
Yeah, yeah. So those were not, yeah. So I'm very happy for their success. And the other thing too is that I think they actually have a very good approach with styling and also budgeting, which I'm a fan of. Because I feel like
Mhm.
the early shows, like Trading Spaces, some of the things that they recommended were just not realistic for homeowners to do. But so I think, yeah, I think the design shows also have come a long way
Oh yeah,
for
and
sure.
I love the Trading Spaces too, but they did some things I think for shock value for the television, series. So I was appalled at some of the things that they did, but it made for good TV.
Yeah.
But when you were talking about real estate agents and becoming stagers or stage and owning businesses, I have to give a shout out really quickly to Melissa Morrow in
Mm-hmm.
Jacksonville, Florida, who just opened it's a antique mall, Linen and Rust, and she's a realtor, stager. She's kind of reinvented herself over and over. And I'm always excited to see what she's doing and in awe of all that she does. But it can be done. I'm like you. I want to stay kind of lean and nimble, and I know what I like and what I don't like. And at my age, I'm kind of an old dog, so I
You're
the new
not.
tricks
Oh my
the new
God.
tr- the new tricks are a little harder for me to do, but I'm always in awe and always excited for my colleagues and friends and peers in the industry when they do something new. In fact, I just sent her a package recently of some coffee bean bags or burlap bags that I can get here really inexpensively in Texas, and I shipped her a few to see how they'd sell in the store,
Oh,
and I've actually sold
awesome.
a couple. So um, I'm running my business over in Jacksonville with a couple coffee bean bags as we speak.
Yeah, you can potentially source all the antique portion of Melissa Merrow's store and then just like wholesale it
You know
to
what?
her.
The shipping kills you. You have to drive
Yeah.
it out there, but that'd be an excuse to go visit. So my ultimate goal is to visit everybody because I love seeing what everybody does in everybody's market, and our industry is still so young. And
Yeah.
the successes and the growth that I have seen on both sides of the coast have been wonderful, and I'm hopeful that it'll have traction in the center part of our country as well, because I know there's still some areas that don't understand it or don't do it. And like you said, they only do vignette staging. They really don't understand the full breadth of the marketing
Yeah.
services that we offer.
I have to say it's come a long way though since we got into the business 10 years ago. I started my business in '06 as well. So like
So
it's changed a lot. So I think the market has changed and I think with shows like Million Dollar Listings and HGTV, like it has brought a lot of awareness and how to the general consumer, which I think is positive and healthy.
I 100% agree. The awareness, and I usually start home staging classes this way is name some shows that you watch, and while it has brought awareness to our industry, I think there's some misconceptions too about the costs that we don't always go in and knock down walls and replace granite and add a bathroom to the basement. It has to be doable for the average homeowner and home seller in order to incorporate into the plan to get the most money. Because at the time of selling, oftentimes that's not the time to be redoing your kitchen. Pricing it accordingly, knowing that you didn't do the kitchen, is more effective and more of a reality check than any kind of recommendation on a $50,000 upgrade that they won't get the return on the investment.
I agree with that. And also having worked on one of the HGTV show, a lot of things are not realistic because they ask people like us, the vendors provide so much like so much things for free. Because they will tell you
Mm-hmm.
they don't have any budget and stuff like that. And I mean, early on in my business, I think I needed a credibility, and so I did it for almost like very, very, very inexpensively. But and that's the thing. I think that's why the final tally of the numbers were kind of inaccurate because there's no way like I have like a whole team of carpenter come in to do custom build out and all they spent like for 3 days and 3 nights and all they have spent over on staging was like $1,000. And you
And
just
that's the
like,
misconception that
yeah,
the general public, and I think that's the trend is down on that we're not seeing that unrealistic budget anymore. When you watch even Property Brothers, where the homeowners have a $50 to $100,000 budget for renos, I think that's more realistic in terms of what's being done, and the contractors are actually being paid, not just free advertising because you're on X, Y, or Z cable channel.
Right. Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. So I think we talked a lot about this already, but I also know that you teach home staging courses. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Like, who are most of your students?
Well, there's actually two courses that I teach. And the first one I started teaching was back in 2008. And that is an 8-hour home staging class through a local community college. Now it's a 4-year institution. They offer certain courses at 4 years. It's Collin College here in Plano, Texas. And what I will say is that I built my business on the platform of education, that people didn't know what I did. In fact, it was crickets when I went out to talk to agents, whether they were in groups or individually. They would say they did it themselves or they didn't need it. So rather than me going to them, I wanted the consumer or whoever it might be to come to me. And I did some research and I went through a small business development center at the same college that I teach through now. And I had a wonderful mentor, and he has recently passed, but he was through SCORE, the Service Corps of Retired Executives. And I think every state, every city should have, it's SCORE, whether you're in the staging business or any other business. These are highly qualified executives who have retired and are willing to give back to you.
Yeah.
My mentor actually suggested that I teach a home staging course, which I had yet written. And there was a real estate school in our college, and it took me a summer to get that together, and it was accepted, and I've been doing it since 2008. But my students run the gamut from home sellers to investors to realtors in the class. Oftentimes people just trying to figure out what they want to do when they grow up, and aren't we all still doing that? And it's kind of fun to know you don't have to figure it out at 21. So listen to that, young people. You don't have to figure out what you want to do when you grow up at 21.
Hey, I'm turning 35. I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up. So,
And I'm not even going to say how old I
whatever.
was when I started my business, but it was a turning point in my life when I did start my business. And I, the belief in the service and the product that we offer has withstood me longer than the money did, because for a long time there was no money coming in. But my idea was always to educate the home seller. Do it yourself if you want to do it. Not everybody's going to hire you. I would rather be seen as a resource than not at all.
Right.
And I like to make evangelists out of the people that I work with or that I teach. And there are more homes to stage than any one of us could ever do. In fact, I see stagers going out of business all the time, and they shouldn't be. They should be just as plentiful as real estate agents. In fact, every agent should have one on their team or know of one to be able to refer. So you can't give away too much information. It's already out there. It's just the way you present it to your audience and how they receive it. And I only teach it twice a year now, but I also teach agents through RISA. We do a staging to sell class. It's what every agent should know. And it's not training them on how to be in the business of a stager. It's how to incorporate it into your listings, to how to share it with your clients in a way that they'll receive it and understand why they need to do it. And if a realtor doesn't feel comfortable doing it, the stager teaching the class is the first person they're going to call when they need the assistance for maybe that trouble listing, or they don't feel comfortable sharing that information. I always liken my role as a stager and realtor to a doctor and a nurse, that if you have children, and I have two and they're full grown now, but when they used to go in to get shots, the doctor would leave the room. The nurse was the one giving them the medicine that was good for them, but they would cry. And the doctor was always the good guy, and the nurse, would offer a candy at the end of it or whatever, and she wasn't that bad, but they didn't like her. So it's okay. I don't need to be liked. I am the voice of reason. I'm also the reality check sometimes, but I think it's important for anyone, seller, realtor, home builder, an investor, to understand where staging should always fit into the marketing plan when they're selling their homes.
And how long is the course that you teach? Is it like a whole quarter?
No, the 3-hour course through RISA is a 3-hour MCE. In fact, there's
The one you're teaching at a college.
oh, that's an 8-hour class. So it's over 2 Saturdays. It's only 4 hours a Saturday for 2 Saturdays. and it's only twice a year. With my work schedule, it's very difficult to do any
Yeah.
more than that. So twice a year is what works. The fall and the early spring, and then the 3 hour MCE we offer through RISA and MetroTex, which is the largest board of realtors here in Dallas. We have 3 instructors that teach that course, but that's an opportunity even for anyone around the country who's a stager, who's a member of RISA. There's some things that you need to do in order to be able to teach and train with that class, but it's an opportunity to be in front of the audience that you want to be in front of, sharing the information that they need to hear, and they're always happy to hear it.
That's very cool. And then what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see home sellers make?
Well, again, going back to what we talked about earlier, the biggest mistake is overpricing a home.
Right. I
Regardless
agree.
of the market, I don't care how good the house looks, even if you've overdone your home for the neighborhood, you cannot expect a buyer to pay more than the market will bear. So no amount of staging can fix that. And also understanding that staging is not about you. You may be the paying client, but you are not the customer. Your buyer is your customer, and you are the retailer now. You are the person that has something to sell. So we are packaging your product, and you are packaging your product for someone besides yourself. So as much as you may love, that collection of seashells that you've got all over the walls,
Right.
that's not what we want the buyer to focus on. So it's important to understand who you're marketing to. So staging is not for the seller, it's for the buyer. And also just emotionally detaching from the home. Oftentimes people aren't ready to be selling, but they've run into life situations where they can't be in their home anymore. As a
Yeah.
stager, being sensitive to understanding that emotional, pull that they still have on the house. We need to be sensitive to that, but we also need to get you on to your next phase, whatever that might be, whether it's downsizing, moving on, moving out of state. We're there to help. So it's kind of like house therapy in many
It
cases,
is. Yeah.
couch whispering, whatever you want to call it.
We just had that happen actually. The homeowner had to sell the house in a kind of not it's in a circumstance that they didn't choose, obviously, but you can tell that when they remodeled their home, it was really their dream home. And then so they actually already canceled their staging contract twice. And
Oh,
then
wow.
yeah, because the realtor was like, well, you really need to sell this, so let's bring the stager back. So this happened twice where they canceled it. We'd refund them the money, and then they call again saying they want to be on the books. And then I just got an email, well, during our interview, they just canceled again. So it's definitely hard. Like I'm not, yeah, like I can say I fully understand it, but it is definitely a hard thing to go through. Especially a lot of times people build a lot of great memories in the home, and for them, they have a lot of attachment to it when it comes to selling. So it's very understandable.
Yeah, and I've had people walk out of the room and cry, and you
Mm,
have to be ready for those emotions, and it has nothing to do with you, because again, it goes back to the nurse doctor. It's medication is it's a shot for the health and the well being of the sale of the home, and if I'm not going to say it, and the realtor's not going to say it, the buyer certainly will, and either they will not come, they will not make any offers, they will make lowball offers, and they may not tell you why they're doing that. But you need to know, you need to understand, you need to be the proverbial fly on the wall to
yeah.
understand what it is they're not connecting to about your home.
Yeah, and I feel for the agent too, because a lot of times you see home seller kind of in a way sabotage their own sale. Like they will make it very difficult. And again, it comes back to emotional detachment. Like if they're emotionally attached, it's very difficult. So they do things that they don't even realize sometimes they're sabotaging the sale.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's important to set expectations at the beginning, even whether you're going to take a listing or not as an agent. As a home stager, I have a list of questions that I ask, and it's really to help understand the emotional side of it and the psychological, where we're at profile wise as far as how far I can push and what things are completely off limits to talk about. If somebody says I'm absolutely not going to paint that room, there's no point in beating a dead horse over it. I may mention buyers don't like that and it's very personal, but you know that you're not going to do it. Just be aware that if they don't tell you that that might be one of the bigger objections. So learning the language and dialogue to help them understand, you acknowledge what they will and will not do. You acknowledge their feelings about it, but you also are not there to sugarcoat and you know socialize at this point. We're here to help you market and package a product. When we go back to thinking about packaging a product, I forgot to mention that when you think about any product on the market, let's say it's a Coke can, you know, for 50 cents, they're spending billions of dollars on the right color red,
Right.
the font and the text that goes on that can, the beads of water sweat that come on the television commercial that you know the taste of the Coke when you see that commercial. Why is it that we aren't spending a fraction of that on our biggest investment and the most money that most consumers will spend in their lifetime product? So that's the kind of educating I think is still lacking. And I know a lot of people don't like to talk dollars or numbers or, you know, that side of staging because I love to do what I love to do and just let me go do it. Um,
I think
yeah,
it's so important to talk about dollars and cents, but I don't think I think I mean I'm not blaming consumers about it because but that's nature, you know. I wouldn't know how a plumber makes profits, right? But I think it's really important to educate our consumer like why staging cost how much it is. Especially I think especially when the market gets hot, there's a new insurgent of new stagers coming in and when they're undercharging a because they really want a business, which I understand, but sometimes they undercut it. It hurts themselves in the long term. It also hurts the industry. And I see that so many times with home stagers been in business for a long time and they're talking about how they're getting undercut. And when they see the final photos, it doesn't look great.
well,
And
that's the thing. You
yeah,
have to be confident enough in your own brand and what you bring to the table that you should never compete on price. I don't. I know that I'm not the cheapest stager. I
yeah.
can't be. I don't. I really don't hold my own furniture inventory, so I have to source that. And there's a fixed cost to that that I can't change. But if you like what I've done, the design aesthetic, the fact that I've been in business almost 10 years here in our market, I have a very strong presence locally as far as educating, and
Hmm.
I find myself as a resource. If you want to work with me, you're going to work with me, and you're willing to pay for that. It's kind of like going to the dollar store or going to Neiman Marcus. You know,
Right.
for certain things, you will pay less, and for other things, you'll pay more. So I just encourage other folks in the business and even consumers who are shopping for stagers. If you're price shopping, realize that, but understand that you're going to get a certain product for the price. And if you are trying to market your $500,000 property and you want bottom dollar pricing as far as a staging company goes, expect it to look like, you know, cast offs from a garage sale. So it is what you pay for. So, yes, anything can be bought for a price, but you ultimately will always get what you pay for. So I say don't leave it to chance. But there are those shoppers out there in every market and every business. So don't fear that. And I don't think it's going to undermine the industry. I think they eventually will weed themselves out because it's not, as you know, an easy business to run.
Yeah. I'm
And
more
so,
worried about the consumers that they hurt, not necessarily for the staging
well, it's
business.
consumer beware. And I even say when
Yeah.
shopping for agents, they should shop at least three realtors. They should
Right.
call at
Hmm.
least three and get some referrals and feedback. You know, just because someone puts a sign in your neighborhood and you see a lot of those same signs in the neighborhood, I often say shop somebody else because, and not that that's a bad thing, but if you're the lowest price point home in the neighborhood and you've got a higher price point that they're working on, whose listing are they going to focus more on? They're, you know, you're farming an area, great, but get an agent who's willing to work, who's willing to put some skin in the game. And I want to say I've been busier this year than ever, and we're in a very hot market. Houses are flying off the shelves. But agents that hire professionals like stagers, professional photographers, sometimes even cleaning companies and other services that are real estate related, and they pay for that for their clients, are setting themselves apart from other agents who don't offer that, who are just sticking a sign in the yard and taking iPhone camera photos.
Yeah.
And yes, a
Gosh.
house will sell, but at what price and to how many people? So you have to brand yourself. You have to me, hold to a brand, and I don't need to compromise for someone else because they don't want to pay.
I think so too. I mean, as stagers, I mean, we've seen kind of all kinds of agents as well. And then what I've seen, the most successful agents are usually the full service agent who are really going to be there for their clients. And then they already have trade people lined up, you know, in their list and stuff like that. Whereas they're really hands-off agents where they basically just like, oh, talk to the owner about that, da da da. Those are the ones that usually stay on the market a little bit longer, from my personal experience. I don't know how it is for yours.
Yeah, and
So,
some agents take discount listings. It's hard to get a listing in a hot market. Not everybody's selling, and those that are selling, uh, they want it done cheaply, and they want to pocket it. But I think it's important that a good realtor will earn their commission. They're worth every penny that they're paid, from the negotiation to the pricing strategy to the pre-marketing. Because once the home goes on the MLS, the front end part of the marketing is done. Now we need to bring in other agents and their buyers. So how are we attracting them? How are we getting them there? And it's always at the front end, stage first, photograph professionally first, price it right first, and then put it out.
yeah, totally. I just want to, I know we have very limited time left, and I just want to take the moment to acknowledge you and thank you for being on the show because I think you have had really great experiences working in the industry and you have given us so much today. And I hope the listeners are going to be able to take away some very valuable information today from this conversation with you. So I usually ask this question every time. What is the one tip you always give to the homeowner when it comes to home staging?
Well, I go back to, it's not about you, the seller, it's about the buyer. Staging is for the buyer of your home. So don't take anything too personally if you're being offered professional advice about how to market and package your product, because right now you are now a retailer. You're just like any shopkeeper out there who needs to package up their product and sell it to the most number of people for the highest price.
That sounds awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cindy. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great night.
You too. And if you want to connect with me, can I just share that bit of
Oh,
information?
yeah. I
All
totally
right.
forgot. Sorry. Tell
That's
us
okay.
about where our listeners can find you.
All right. My website is homestarstaging.com, but I'm actually more active on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And it's all the same at name. It's at Homestar Staging. And I'd love to connect with others there. I share a lot of information online and connect with great people like you and get to meet you sometimes in person at conventions. So I'll be at the RISA convention in January. So I hope to meet some of you there who are listening. And please come up and say hi if you are.
Yeah, I have to say, Karen's photos are amazing. I just like I really love the way she approached staging. So
Thank you so much.
you
Can I give a
guys,
shout out
yeah,
to my photographer? Because you mentioned
yeah. I
real
mean,
quickly, I want
yeah,
to say,
no, please, because that was one of the questions I want to ask, but I want to respect of your time. But
oh,
if we have like
yes,
5 minutes, I would actually want to talk about professional photography because I know that's a big part of your business as well.
absolutely. And I really, I wouldn't look good without my photographer. Honestly, my work would never, and I say good staging looks bad with bad photography. So no matter
Mm.
what, you're only as good as your photos. So I think it's really key to connect with a professional real estate photographer. Lance Selgo with Unique Exposure Photography, uniqueexposurephotography.com. He is at Lance UEP, UEP at the end of it. He is going to be teaching and training with me a workshop at the RISA convention in Las Vegas, staging and styling tips. And it's really not just about the product that you
Karen,
work
are you
on those
there?
photos. Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Karen, you broke up in the last sentence. You want to talk about that again?
Oh yeah. What was I saying? I'm sorry about Lance and Lance UEP on social media.
Yeah, like you got cut off after you guys going to be teaching a workshop.
Oh, okay. We're teaching a staging and photo styling workshop at the RISA convention, but he has been pivotal in growing my business because not only for the photos of the homes that we work on together to list and to sell for the agents and the sellers, those photos carry a lifetime worth of gold for me because I can share those with next clients who might
Yeah.
be
Hmm.
shopping. Those photos are good for branding and they really have a lifetime's worth of use for your website, your social media. And I really don't post anything anymore that aren't professionally shot because for me it's my brand. I think it's important to uphold that level of service and quality, and the photos definitely help translate that.
Yeah, I think that was the thing too with your photos. They look really bright, which really helps to sell the staging. Because I think a lot of times when I've seen like agents using their really expensive DSLR shooting it, like a Canon or
Okay.
Nikon.
Let me say something about that because I could have a high formula race car. I would not know how to drive that thing. Just
Yeah.
because you own it doesn't mean you know how to use it.
Yeah, and then a lot of times I see the photos still come out too dark. Well, one of the thing is they don't know how to manipulate the lighting like a photographer does, and two is they didn't do post-production.
Yes.
I work on photo shoots, professional photo shoots for huge companies that gross billions of dollars a year, and they spend a lot of money on post-production. It's because it makes the product look really, really good. And that's why I find that especially like real estate photography are not that expensive. I mean, you ranges between 150 to 250. Like super high-end ones are like 500, but they include, like floor plan and stuff like that. But it's really worth it because that's like way less than 1% of your listing price. But it is so important because that's the first thing the buyers see nowadays.
Exactly. They fall in love online, and then that feeling translates when they see the property in person. So photos drive traffic, and I think, and I really focus on that too in the staging consultations, where I will share with them the eye of the photographer, the lens, what they see, and if you're looking at a picture online on your phone, it's a very small screen. You don't need a lot of stuff to clutter up the image of the house that you're trying to sell. So I think it's important to understand to translate that to a client that the photos are also another level that you need to understand how to stage for.
Yeah, and composition is so important too. I think that's one of the things that people don't realize how important it is because how you crop and how you compose a photo can give like a very different feeling.
I agree. So partner with a great professional photographer, have one in your arsenal of affiliates, and I think you can't go wrong. I think it's important for all stagers to find one.
And real estate agents too, especially real
Agents
estate
too. Yes,
agents.
yes. Real
Yeah.
estate agents do too. Of course they do.
I recently staged a project and the home seller specifically called me because I think the real estate agent is actually her dad. And she knew that her dad was just going to use his cell phone to take the photograph for the listing photograph. So she actually called me. She's like, can you please take photo with. I was kind of like, well, I have a DSLR, but she's like, anything would be better than the cell phone. So like, please just do it. So we ended up taking the photo for her and did post production for her. But still, yeah, like I totally understand. I don't know why listing agents still think they can get away with it. So please, like if you're a homeowner listening to this, make sure your real estate agent hires a really great photographer.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
We covered it all. I appreciate the time and hope it was of value to your listeners.
Yeah, no, I thought you were amazing. I think you were great. So
Oh,
thank you
Cindy,
so
thank you.
much again. Like I really, really appreciate your time. Especially I know Texas is a little bit later than California. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Well, thank you for having me on, Cindy, and we'll talk with you soon.
Yeah, I can't wait. Talk soon.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. So that's it for today's show. I hope you had enjoyed it. I just love how passionate Karen is about this business. After 10 years, we have both seen a lot of people coming and going. So it's really great to see her business thrive and continuously to make a great impact. I also love she makes so many shout outs to her friends and partners in the industry, and I find that very, very rare. I just love that she has a lot of great things to say, and I'm so passionate about educating others about home staging. So I hope you have taken away some really valuable tips and ideas that you can use in your own staging. And thank you so much for listening today. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a review and a rating on iTunes, SoundCloud, or Stitcher. It will only take you 1 minute to do it, but this will help us keep the show going. As usual, feel free to ask any questions on the show notes or in our private Facebook group. You can find our show notes by going to www.stageformore.com/podcast. That's it. Have a fantastic week and happy staging.